for those of you who don't know me or listening for the first time, Shannon Aylesworth, founder and CEO of Ursamin, a software platform designed to help clinicians coordinate care for their patients more effectively, especially in this very fragmented delivery system. Been around for, well, we've been doing the provider side for a couple of years now. And really the platform acts as a shared workspace for clinicians to share data on patients and coordinate and manage patients better, so we get better outcomes. Craig, please introduce yourself to the audience here, give a little bit of a quick snapshot on your history, and then we'll jump into some questions.
Very good. Thanks, Shannon. Yeah, I'm Craig Hocum. I'm a physician assistant. I went to school at University of Iowa in 1980, started practice in 82, primarily primary care, family practice. I started off in rural medicine, so I practiced in Alaska, Dutch Harbor. I practiced in Washington State in a clinic up in the North Cascades. So at the time when I started, then I went to, I did surgery in Iowa for a while, and then I went back to family practice for about 8 years. And then I jumped to nephrology and took care of dialysis patients, which entailed a lot of primary care and a lot of referrals and a lot of specialty type things. Then decided, well, I haven't done oncology yet, so I think I'll go to oncology. So my last stint at Mayo after 28 years was doing oncology for 8 years. I did that and then retired about 2 years ago. And I guess one of the reasons why I retired is because I couldn't take the massive multitasking that I had to do every day because of the problems with continuity and coordination of care. It became a job itself. I would probably spend 40% of my time looking through charts before I saw a patient, and then trying to put that into some sort of order so that I could see the patient. When I started in 1980, it was quite simple. We didn't have digital charts. We had handwritten charts, and you took the chart and you looked through the chart. That you were the sole person that saw the patient. Nowadays, you're seeing multiple patients are seeing multiple providers. So when I started, it was handwritten. I knew the patient. It was a relationship. It wasn't just a bunch of data. We got to know the patient, which then started to be able to connect all the things that the patient was going through. I knew about. Okay, I knew when they went somewhere because I sent them. I knew when they'd come back. I knew what labs they were because it was manageable. Today's patients and EMR and their loads that people have, it's not manageable.
Right. So yeah, I hear you. And there's, I mean, we are passionate, so we could talk days about it. Let's give the readers, the listeners, a little bit more context on just a little bit about the PA's role, because I think also I think many of us patients, clinicians are listening, but for the patient side, understanding the role of the PA and not realizing that you don't specialize, you do specialize, but like that was one of the big things for me about your history, that, you're like, I did primary care, I did oncology. I was like, how do you keep jumping around? So tell me just a little bit about how the PAs are trained and what, why, because this all leads to how we found you and ended up getting you on as an advisor. And when we're saying, hey, family medicine is where family medicine and oncology, but originally that wasn't my thought process, right? And so I was like, you were like, hey, I've done primary care. So just talk a little bit about the PA training and what your kind of role is and why you have a unique perspective on it.
Well, the PAs, when I started, it was really geared to family practice and primary care. So my whole training was primary care at University of Iowa.
Was the system focused on primary care back then? It sounds like again, there was one doctor and we were all focused. Okay, so they were focused on primary care. Go ahead.
Well, that's where the jobs were. Okay, at that time, that's where the jobs were. It was to help the physicians in need because, they were starting to get more patients. They needed more help.
Okay.
It's kind of the whole evolution of medicine
Yeah.
and
Well, in our
and
patient population, probably, right?
and the patient population started, expanding. Diseases were earlier detected. There were more patients. There were started to develop more specialties, and that was supposed to be the relief that the PA would provide. Well, it soon, and that's what our training was. But we also, we did rotations like the doctors do. We did rotations in emergency medicine, surgery, internal medicine, family practice, radiology, oncology, psychiatry. So we really touched on everything. So we had to know a little of everything when we graduated. And most of the time we
Because you
took
were
our
primary, because you were primary care. So you started traditionally in primary care, which is it's
right,
multi-specialty. We didn't, so you're kind of threading the needle for me now. I'm like, oh, because back then we only had one doctor, and like I think you said, only on occasion a specialist.
right,
But we didn't
right.
have that influx. So that story is very interesting because you came in when everybody was being treated by primary care, and over time we've split the care,
Ex-
and that's where
exact.
PA started. So you have multi training. That may not be all PAs today, but your particular history happens to be.
Yeah, back then that's why we were trained. I mean, that was our purpose
That makes sense.
is to fill those gaps. Now, um, even back then, it was we had a lot of responsibility, and we practiced by ourselves, and we practiced in a group. But we were the ones that went in, saw the patients, and did our thing. And I mean, we consulted with with the provider or your sponsor quite often. And but over time, as more experience you get, the more you become more of a mentor to the internists and the residents that come in because you've seen it. So um, medicine was quite different back then. It wasn't as anxiety producing and as disjointed as it is now.
Hmm.
There were less distractions.
Yeah.
And I relate medicine now to it kind of causing everyone to have ADD, attention deficit disorder, because there's so many distractions. But back to
Well, it's
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, yeah. That's just so my yeah. I did primary care, family practice. I mean, I did ER work back then. Once I got out of school, the training, was basically like a medical student. So we went basically 3 years of medical school, and the last year and a half was doing um, internships at certain hospitals all over.
Right.
Um, we're board certified. We have to be board certified. We have to recertify every 6 years.
Okay.
So I certified 6 times now, or 5 times now. So we all have to keep up on that. So it's, uh, and I think
That is
as,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, just like, the transition between um, the early days of single charting to nowadays, you have to have those quote specialists as a PA or NP to be able to manage day-to-day activities in most
Right.
clinics. Um,
Yeah, would you say that the PAs today are as well-rounded or probably more specialized like the doctors have become because of the way we think about like what you're saying is that, in the old days, we're all
in the
aging
old days,
ourselves on this call for the youngins. In the old days, it was, a
yes,
single doctor seeing everybody, and then it really became, and again with advances. I just noted on Facebook or LinkedIn. I think you probably saw my post where I was like, I'm just amazed, even in the last 10 years, because I've been in and out of orthopedic for my back, and I did a lot of damage. Like everybody else, first of all, our backs
sure,
are all like, as we sit in our posture and we spend more time in our computer, were causing more ortho issues. But I in particular enjoyed playing rugby and riding horses and did some
That'll do
extra
it.
and
That'll do it.
traveling and being hunched over. So I've had a lot of trying to undo the damage that I did to myself. But I'm
Right.
fascinated with how far PT has come and how we moved away from surgery to we can heal ourselves. So you just think about how much medicine is advanced because of the specialization, but it's the specialization has also caused that fragmentation of care, which makes it really hard for all of us. Like you say, you're a little bit ADD, patients are bounced, clinicians can't, because I love the theory of and concept of digital door, but we have like 15 digital doors now, and everybody has their own process. And so I guess that's where I'm like, our PAs having to specialize now too, because our doctors
Yes.
have, which
Yep.
now, if my care team, which used to be consist of a doctor, a nurse, and a couple of PAs or whatever, 5 or 10 people, it's now 35 people or that are involved, if not more, in my care. And that's the piece where we're all a little bit
How do you connect them all? How do
right.
you connect
We're
them
all
all?
we're all and that's
How do
where
they
like
know? How do they know you? I mean, you get so much input, but there's no way to navigate through that because it's isolated bits of a chart, and but there's no coherent narrative that develops from that. It's all
well, right, because
fragments.
it's one big matrix. I when I first started looking at it, um, I was like, oh, it's like work because I don't know if I've worked in matrix environments because I was a channel. I was a channel. My first big career step was in Cisco being a channel person, and I had no control over the team that I had to manage. So I had to figure out how to control behavior that wasn't under my direct command, and that's healthcare now. It's everybody's reporting to a different boss with different procedures and different processes and different tech stacks, and then you're trying to figure out how to, and everybody ends up being the glue. And that's why this particular episode is about bottlenecks, is how many different places are you trying to get these pieces to connect, and how many in technology. And I've been telling, it's funny, I love how much I can tell telecom analogies and people in healthcare get it. The can you hear me now is trying to get connections between towers, and that's patients moving through the system, and how do you connect. And usually the patient, unfortunately, when the patient gets into a really bad scenario, they're jumping faster and faster. And you in oncology, I mean, your ability to see in primary care what the impact is, but as that patient progresses in their disease, the
Mhm.
connections are much faster and more risk of dropping and bad outcomes. So that adds, like we were saying, it's exhausting and terrifying. And that's what I saw doing the clinics, was just watching the fear of making a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, and you're asking providers, nowadays to exceed the ability of a human to multitask. And that's the problem is you can't possibly
Or like
multitask.
women can multitask, but even they can't handle
Well,
it.
they can't multitask this.
Not this level. That's a great point. To
Nobody,
this level, that's a really great point.
nobody can multitask this.
Yeah.
Clinicians spend most of their time trying to rediscover what has happened already to the patient rather than focusing on advancing their care. So every time you see a different provider, even if it's the same practice, even if they're next door, they have to rediscover what what is already there, but it's not visible.
You're
It's
always looking in the past. You're never
you're
being able
all
to look forward.
yeah. So when you go into the room with when a patient comes in and you're on your computer, what you're trying to do is rediscover why the patient's there. You're not listening to the patient. So you've
And the
got
patient's
this.
sitting there going, "Why aren't you listening to me?"
Correct, because they're trying to figure out the narrative because they've had to piece that chart together. If they're good, they've had to spend time piecing
And we're sitting here
that chart.
going, "Well, why don't you have it? Why don't you guys talk to each other?"
Exactly. So the practitioner's day starts off terrible when what you're trying to do is rediscover why you're seeing the patient
Mhm.
instead of having it apparent, like
Yep.
on a narrative or a pre-visit, what we call it. That sets the stage for the whole day. if you have a complete pre-visit note before you go in to see the patient, instead of being on the computer doing your stuff, you're face to face with the patient talking, because you already know what you're there for. And you have already connected the dots between what's happened in the past and what's happened now.
Yeah.
So how do you get to that point in the existing EMRs that we have nowadays? You can't. The only way you can do it is to spend more time in the pre-visit going through all the charts and all the notes and all the labs, and then putting it together yourself. And that's what I mean by spending, half my day trying to do that. And a lot of times not, and trying to be that provider for the patient, and not be on the computer. I pride myself in not being that person. I was never on the computer when I saw the patient in the room. I did my homework. I did my pre-visit homework. And, patients appreciate that, but at the risk of being burned out, of being angry, of
The
not
question
being
is the question is how many patients can you see if you're supposed to see the patient? I mean, how many patients do you see? Like, and
exactly.
it's like how many patients can you see? How many patients do you need to see? And how many patients, and if we take this all the way back around to the conversation that I'm always saying is we have this massive influx of patients in that our clinicians need to care for. And so the
Right.
hours that your time that you can spend with patient is shrinking. And so
Yep.
if you increase the amount of time you spend on that patient pre-visit, just to have the conversation with them, then less patients get seen. And that's our biggest problem right now as a industry and as humans and taxpayers who trying to get healthcare for everybody.
Yep.
Let's look at clinical capacity, and that's why the bottlenecks and drop patients happen, because we got to fit more in and that time that it takes to put the story together. If you do increase that, then other patients don't get seen, and that's why, I mean, I can't tell you as a patient, as a caregiver, how many times we get notices, hey, this doctor is no longer accepting patients. They just
Yep.
can't.
No, you can't. They can't. It's impossible. I mean, you reach a tipping point. It's and it's not their problem. It's not the provider's problem. It's how things have evolved in technology to just now give us a a a chart that has all the data. There's no question. We don't need more data.
Mhm.
We just need to know how to take that data and present it in a way that helps the provider see that patient and take better care of the patient, and not overcharge the patient or not overtest the patient because the test was already done a week ago, but you don't know about it because it was done at a different clinic.
Right.
So,
Which,
so
which what's happening in that scenario is that the payer is denying stuff. So let's play that forward. So not
exactly.
only are we doubling up tests, and patients know this, but not only are we doubling up tests, and they knew that, okay, there's double testing. And the way they solved that was the payer jumps in and either denies the claim or approves the claim. Well, denies the claim because it was already done. And so you're stuck trying to figure out how to get access to that data, and you don't have time. So you talk to the patient and you say, "Did you have labs? Can you get copies of those?" And then the patient's pissed because we're like, "Why can't you get copies of it?" It's like this cascading effect.
Well, it is.
And
And if you think about it, everything is there. If you for this instance, if the patient is double billed, okay, they've been billed for the first lab, then you do the lab, they're going to come after you. They're going to ask you, why isn't this paid? So
right,
just that step alone puts more pressure now that the desk has to do something about that. They have to contact the insurance company to say why. So it uses more resources when it doesn't have to use more resources. So it's a cascade that happens in clinics where, a little minor thing in most cases turns into something that takes 45 minutes, and
right,
that's wasted time. That's not efficient, and it's not a way to basically run a business
right,
itself. It's like
right.
No, you don't need to do that. So I think that's kind of the essence, I think, of working nowadays in this modern era of medicine is let's all get the story straight. Let's all be on the same page. Let's all see the same thing. Let's all work from there, you know, and
I think that's a good point. We just have just a few minutes left, but I think that's what I have, and I think we have, and you have, we have been saying is what's the one thing that we can focus on that will elevate the clinicians' lives and not just, I know a lot of vendors say burnout and all that. Listen, that always if you do the right thing, if we do the right thing, and the right thing is getting visibility to the same story so you're not having to recreate and you're truly working as a team. And that doesn't mean like I think there's a lot of theories that putting everybody in the same team is still going to make everybody work together, right? And that's a theory, by the way. In organizations, when you're matrix, we used to say, well, if they reported to me, I'd fix the problem. No, what
no,
everybody, and that's, consolidation of EMRs. Listen, I have no issue with that. EMRs have a very big role in documentation of the patient story, but the patient story has gotten so complex. Just because somebody works for you, all that does is puts the pressure back to you to
right.
really see what else is broken. And in this scenario, we can't make the entire healthcare industry report to one boss. So we have to look at this strategically and say, let's look at the patient pathway and see how many people are involved in that team. And it doesn't matter who they report to, but know that everybody has to look at that patient story and understand that as that. And I had a mentor that gave me the best advice early on. You know who you are, Dave. He goes, Shannon, all doctors need to know, and clinicians, is where are you coming from and where do we need you to go? And that where are you coming from is, like you said, where you're wasting so much time trying to figure that out that we never get
It's
to the
just,
forward push. And it
yeah,
doesn't matter what that forward push is. And we know that fixing this front end is gonna help, but that you can't
yeah,
ever get there. And then we talk to you guys and we preach to you about shared decision making with the patient, like you have any time to share a decision because you're so busy trying to catch up,
yeah,
right? So
exactly. Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's go ahead.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I agree 100. I think what you're saying is we need to redevelop the storyline. You know, we need to
Bring that back to what you
re
had initially when it was one doctor.
exact
Try and pretend like
ex
the patient has
exact
one doctor.
exactly
I think that's a
exactly.
great analogy. You're like, hey, let's get it back to where it looks
It,
like the patient has one doctor and everybody
it,
has that view.
that's exactly right. That's what we need. And think back then. In the 80s, we had RNs were used as RNs. I'm just going off a little bit here. Okay. RNs were used because they were the link between the patient and the physician and the team. They went in and saw the patient. Like them, like the practitioner, they knew the patient. They knew the social aspects of the patient. They knew the family, things like that. So that was totally replaced by just people that room patients. They don't ask questions. They just room you.
'Well, yeah, because again, well, we could end up.
Yeah, I know. I
So
know.
our next topic needs to be about how that's changed. Because listen, again, I'm going to harp on clinical capacity, the pushing off of the non-clinical work because we're just trying to scale. And you're like, there's so many problems. That's why when I first got into this, and it can be overwhelming. And a lot of people say, other people have tried, Shannon. How are you not going to get clobbered? I'm like, you just have to really sit back and continue to think about how this has evolved. And now, like you said, they're rumors.
Exactly.
They're rumors. And we've decided that they don't need a clinical degree to put somebody in a room. We don't need our RNs to put people in a room when somebody with non-clinical training can do that. And I've got family members who are training to be non-clinical support, which
Yeah,
it should be a treasured role now to get the administrative, but at the same time, some of this stuff can be done with technology. And I think that's
I think
that's where we'll
that's
end up circling around is like one of these topics will be about how technology
yes,
can solve that bottleneck.
yes,
You don't need a body. And that's
yes.
where AI and that the heralding of AI is going to solve it. You're like, no, there's still a lot of other things we have to do. We do believe in AI, absolutely is going to make a huge difference and does. I think I mentioned to somebody earlier, I'm like just a huge believer in it and it's in its place. But there's so many other things that we got to do to get this infrastructure moving right for matrix organization.
Yeah,
So
yep,
that'll
I
be our
agree. Yeah, no, I agree. I
Let's
mean,
wrap up.
okay,
Thank you so much, Craig. This was awesome.
thank you.
Thank you guys who are listening. Hopefully we didn't drone on too long. We'll get a little bit crisper as we move along with some of the questions,
Yeah,
try and share more information. But really excited, Craig. This is exciting.
it
Looking forward
is.
to continuing on. Thank you
Yeah,
guys. I'm
me
gonna close.
too. Thanks, Shannon. Bye.